How you doing today, Cory?
I'm fantastic, Grant. How about yourself, bud?
I'm doing good. How's work going for you?
Work is really cool, dude. We got this new camera. It's the DJI 4D. It's a revolutionary camera system. We're super stoked to have it. This thing has the gimbal integrated onto the camera itself. So it's got a 6K full frame sensor attached to a gimbal head, attached to the body of the camera. So with it being a DJI product, who are most famous for or most known for like their drone technology, this camera has the same sensors as like the drones do on the bottoms and in the front of it. So it can tell like how far it is off the ground and what's in front of it to help adjust the gimbal accordingly. So like you're walking along and it looks like a dolly shot because it reads your like upward and downward movement of your body and compensates for it. Honestly, it made me super fucking. It is so dope. But it made me a little self-conscious because I took a video of it and I could just see that head bobbing and I was like, man, do I really bob that much while I walk? God damn
it. That's such a mood. I remember the one time that I got to try out the handheld excuse me, the handheld device for the camera at film school, and holy shit, it just immediately made me realize marching band was good, but not that good at teaching me to keep like steady.
Your roll step wasn't into
roll step is not enough. You need to be like you need to be able to adjust your shoulders basically.
You need to be fucking walking. Legolas in Lord of the Rings where he's walking on top of the snow, like just so flat-footed.
Absolutely. Anyway, speaking of some like Legolas or Lord of the Rings, let's take this in a science fiction or fantasy type direction. I'm thinking movies. We've talked about video games the last few weeks, and what do you think about talking about maybe like movies or TV, the cinema as some would call it?
The cinema, motion pictures, movies,
moving pictures. I love them down. Anyway,
well, we had speaking of big opus epics and franchises, Obi-Wan Kenobi finished up this past week. Did you catch that?
What did you think of that?
It started and ended very strong, but it definitely dwindled in the middle. And I think, I'm jumping on the bandwagon that a lot of fans were on that like, well, first I'm trying to understand where this show, like what was the point of this show? What journey were we supposed to go on with Obi-Wan, Ben Kenobi? And like, okay, he's a wreck of a man. He lost to Anakin Vader at the end of Revenge of the Sith, and he's living in, watching over Luke. But like, it's I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan, to be perfectly honest. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Star Wars and I love getting more Star Wars, and I enjoyed the ride on a surface level. But when I really kind of broke it down, I was like, wow, there's a lot of things about this show that just didn't quite make sense to me.
Yeah,
starting in episode 1. He's watching over Luke Skywalker, as he's being raised by his uncle, and aunt, Owen and Beru Lars. And like, we're shown that Obi is a broken man, as I mentioned, but he's devoid of the Force, but he really like, he's adamant on training Luke, and which like, that was, I think, the first moment that kind of caught me off guard. Like, so here's a guy who, can't force us, a rock to float or to do really anything besides cut meat off a giant sandworm, and yet he still wants to train Luke as a Jedi. Like, how are you going to do that when you can't even do shit yourself? So like, yeah, that was weird. But at the same time, I will grant the first episode also doing a great job at the idea of subverting our expectations. So they built this whole show up of like Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine watching over Luke, and then boom, Leia enters the picture. And it turns out the whole show is about him and Leia's relationship.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great.
That kind of threw me at first. Like, I wasn't sure how to feel about that, honestly. It ended up not being my biggest issue with the show by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still like still to the end of the show was just kind of like a little weird. I was like, why is this about Leia? I like Leia. I don't get me wrong. Leia is one of my maybe my favorite character in all of the entire franchise, but it felt just a little like forced. Like we want to do a Skywalker, we want to have him connect with the children, but it feels like a cop out to do Luke. Like, well, we only have one other child that we can do this with, and you're like, well, I guess we're just gonna have to do Leia, and it just felt a little like
Phrasing.
out of yeah, sorry, yeah, fair enough. It just felt a little out of
She's
place.
10 years old, Graham. Jesus.
I know. I'm terrible. I'm a horrible human being, but it just felt a little out of place. You know, yeah, and
it was doing a Skywalker without doing a Skywalker.
Yeah, and when I say forced, literally the setup to getting them together, getting Obi-Wan to go after Leia, all of that just felt like it was written for the purpose of getting those two characters together, and that always is not a good.
Yeah.
Yes, but it should never feel when writing should never feel like it like this is only there to serve that purpose. Writing it should have that natural flow. Should have that natural flow of it. Just happened to be that they were drawn together in this moment. If they wanted to tell a story about having these characters working together, needs to be a much more nuanced reason to me than
organic.
Oh, yeah, a much more organic reason than she got kidnapped
by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, no less.
Yeah, by the she got kidnapped by Flea
in the worst fucking chase scene of all time. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
for adults who can't run down a 10-year-old. Yeah, no.
Yeah, at least in Harry Potter with all the the hounds like chasing them through the forest, at least that was like, okay, they're teenagers, they're nearly adults, they're competently taking care of themselves, they're running, of course, that made sense. That was a scene that made sense.
Yeah. Here
it was like, why is this scene taking longer than the chase scene from Harry Potter 7? Why is this a thing? I think I liked it a little more than you. But you made an interesting point, which was why are we hearing this story? What's the point of this? What's the end goal of this? And it seemed like the end goal was simply to have them fight again. I felt like the first fight they had on Mustafar, as much as I don't like the prequels, I felt like that fight kind of wrapped up their arc together before he finally fights him in A New Hope. Personally, like, I don't like what George Lucas did with the prequels, but I felt like at least that wrapped up their like conundrum that they were going through, their conflict, all of film 3. Like, I felt like that was resolved, and it made sense what their fight was going to be like in A New Hope. This just felt like more unnecessary, like, building to that conflict. And sure, it was a great fight sequence in that last episode. I loved that fight sequence, especially like Obi-Wan just lifting his arms and all the rocks just in the air, just pummeling Vader. Like, that was cool. That was an interesting thing. We've never seen Vader just truly get pummeled in his suit. He's only
nor have we seen Obi-Wan control the Force like that.
Exactly.
He kind of unleashed
Yoda
on that.
He went Yoda.
Yeah, he went full Yoda.
He went exactly what I imagined Yoda would do, and the reason why I never thought Yoda should ever have a lightsaber. It's because he's so powerful that he would literally just move a fucking mountain to destroy whoever is attacking him. So, like, yeah, I thought it was a very cool fight sequence. I thought it was very well done, and I thought that, like, I loved that sequence with like the broken helmet of Vader with the flashing red light on his face of his lightsaber. as he keeps moving his lightsaber and it keeps like lighting up his eyes. That was really well done. And the cutting out between the electronic voice of James Earl Jones and the voice of Hayden Christensen, brilliant. A lot of great things in this. It was a lot of good ingredients inside a shit sandwich.
That's a good way to put it. Like, yeah, there was definitely some great key moments, and that's why I said it kind of started and ended good, just from the sense of like, you know, there was some really nice, you know, like we saw him looking over Luke and buying the spaceship that Luke plays with in A New Hope, like, so it was like seeding that kind of stuff, and then yeah, in the end. Little bits of the voice modulation I thought was fantastic, and just little like one-liners, little like key lines in there that would pay off in the original trilogy. You know, like Anakin, you didn't. I'm not your failure. I killed Anakin, and I'm what remains. And you know, like Vader killed your father. You know, as we were told back in 1980 with Empire Strikes Back. So. Yeah, like it had a lot of good little moments, but it just like, it just like there was just so much more going on that wasn't necessary. And like as great a job as Moses Ingram did as the third sister, I still don't like her arc didn't really wrap up in a nice little bow like I would hope it would.
I would have preferred she just have her own series. Like I liked her character enough. I would like, why was Obi-Wan involved? Her story was good enough on its own. Why couldn't it just have been about her like finally getting the courage and finding the right moment to finally chance her vengeance on Vader.
Yeah.
Like that would have been like, a great series. It would have been a series all about an anti-hero, and I don't know why Disney and other big film companies are not jumping on the idea. People love anti-heroes. Breaking Bad is one of the most popular series of all time. It's all because people like villains and anti-heroes as their main characters. For God's sake,
who is
Sopranos.
scorned, the youngling that's scorned, and becomes like that is gold right there for sure. And there's so much more of a story there.
Fuck good characters. Fuck heroes in shows. Obviously, like we need those stories too, but most of the time, anti-heroes are far more interesting characters. So I think that a show all about Reva would have been way more interesting. She's getting hate because she's in the middle of an Obi-Wan Darth Vader fight. If this was like a Jedi Fallen Order thing where it was Cal Kestis going up against Vader, but you just switch out Cal Kestis with Reva, I think people would have liked it way more because it was more focusing on her and how interesting of a character she is.
Yeah. That would have been awesome to see Cal Kestis from the game pop in, bring in Cameron Monaghan in like a little cameo.
Yeah.
I would have loved that.
Everybody was saying it was going to happen, and I was just sitting there going, it's not going to happen, you guys. I know I want this for you. I want this all for you. It's not going to happen. I wanted it. No. I loved that game.
But they did introduce, like, in all fairness, to be fair, they did introduce the Inquisitor home base in Obi-Wan, which originally first appeared in Fallen Order. They definitely like Fallen Order. The video game, for those who don't know, it's a new generation video game where you follow Cal Kestis.
2019 Star Wars game where you play a Jedi and explore the world in a very Souls-like.
Well, he was a youngling, similar to Reva. He was a youngling that during Order 66, he watched his master get killed in front of him, and so he went on hiding. He went in.
They're parallel stories.
Very parallel, but he remains on the side of good, whereas Reva went bad. But you still fight Inquisitors. And like the ninth sister plays a fact and stuff like that. So there's definitely seedings. Like it could have happened, but I agree with you. I wasn't super optimistic about it. No, the cameos we did get, spoilers. So, I mean, at this point, fuck it.
We've been spoiling it the entire time. Who gives a fuck at this point?
I sure don't. We got Ian McDermott back as Emperor Palpatine, Darth Sidious.
That
was not bad.
We got Qui-Gon Jinn back.
Liam Neeson and his giant cock.
Neeson. Yeah. Liam Neeson. That was a big surprise. I honestly expected him to be one of the main characters in this series as a force
Yeah,
ghost.
that was what sounded like
And
they were
then when
setting
he
that
never
up.
appeared in episode 1, I was like, well, I guess they're not doing that. And then he appears right at the end of the season, like
For like 10
for
seconds.
like, yeah, the last
Not
60
even.
seconds, last 60 seconds, he's there. He only speaks for like 10 seconds, but he's there for like the last 60 seconds of the show. And it's basically like, hey, I'm ready for a season 2 if you are. That's the
And did you know
dialogue. That is the literal
that
dialogue.
is-
I'm ready for season 2 if you are.
And did you notice that part of the somebody was asleep at the wheel that day? So
Yes.
quick explanation.
That day?
Well, shut up. Anyway, so either the editor, the director, or the script supervisor, or Liam Neeson. So one of those 4 people were drunk at the wheel that day. And let's be honest, Liam Neeson, we're not going to criticize him. He'll come after us. We've seen Taken. He's got a certain set of skills. I'm not pissing that guy off.
Yeah.
Deborah Chow, great director. She's got a great pedigree behind her with a lot of great movies and television. So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. So it's either the editor or the script supervisor. And really quick, for those who don't know, the script supervisor on a film set or TV set is in charge of the continuity to make sure that when you go from shot A to shot B and you change an angle, things look the exact same. Because they film everything from one angle and then they reset and then they'll film from the next angle. So the actors have to redo everything they did over and over and over and over and over and over. So the script supervisor makes sure that every single time it's done the same way over and over and over and over, so that you, the viewer, don't notice anything different.
Is that person's sleeves? Is that person's sleeves down to their wrists, or are they rolled up to their elbows? We need to make sure that that's the same in every scene, so that when the editor is going through, they're not cutting between and having like one shot the person's arms are exposed. Next time the sleeve is all the way down to the wrist.
Or
and
the most common thing is watch a sitcom, and if they're eating food, watch how much food is on like their plate at any given shot, because it changes.
Watch Modern
every
Family for any episode.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, so Liam Neeson, from his wide, when he turns around and starts talking to Obi-Wan, he's like, he's got his hands in his sleeves and he's doing his whole like Jedi look. But then when it cuts to another shot, a closer shot, he's got a totally different pose. And he's like, well, let's go on to season 2, like you said.
Yeah.
And I was like, we have the burden of knowledge, going to film school. I was like, all right, either Liam fucked up and didn't do the same motion every time, or the editor cut out some, or the script supervisor fucked up and didn't tell Liam he was doing something different, or the editor had to cut out a chunk of dialogue. I think we're missing some dialogue there. I think that scene was a lot bigger and it got cut down because they think they're, like originally wasn't supposed to set up a season 2. It was going to just kind of wrap everything up in a nice bow.
Yeah.
For A New Hope. But because of the hype.
Obviously editing the episodes as they were releasing them.
I mean, something like that you could totally edit in the moment. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, they could have totally changed the ending after airing the first few episodes. And so when they felt like, oh, we could get a season 2 out of this, I think it's now edited to make it seem more open to that season 2. And so I 100% agree with you. And I think we're missing something there. So go back and watch it. Liam changes.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I noticed that a lot more now in shows. I was just watching an episode of my favorite show ever, The Leftovers, 2014 to 2017, created by Damon Lindelof and Tom Perrotta. And even in that show, which I deem to be a practically perfect show, you'll sometimes see in wide shots, like they're in what I think is one of the greatest episodes of television history, season 2, episode 8 of The Leftovers, International Assassin. He is standing. There's one shot where he's standing in a wide with a little girl that he's about to push into a well, and as he's looking at her, you can see in the wide shot that he's talking, that his lips are moving, but there's no dialogue happening. But it's something like you'd only notice it if you're like really, really paying attention. And I've seen that episode like 4 or 5 times now. So at this point, I just love that show. It's a perfect show. I think everybody should see it. Even if you don't think you'll get anything out of it, almost everybody does. It means so much on different levels. But like, I just noticed that a lot more now is mini shows do that. And Obi-Wan actually had a lot of scenes, a lot of them. I kept noticing like wide shots where I'd see Ewan McGregor's lips moving or Moses Ingram's lips moving or something, but you couldn't hear any dialogue. It was just supposed to be like them like squaring off or something or whatever. But I could clearly see their lips moving and wide. So if anybody's gonna rewatch that show, take a look at wide shots where the camera is far away. Take a look at if the lips are moving on actors when they're not supposed to be, because I noticed at least 7 instances of that across the 6 episodes. So
shit.
Yeah.
Well, Graham, I'm going to make myself another drink, but you mentioned The Leftovers earlier as a show you're watching. What else are you watching there, bud? Tell us about it while I make myself another rum and Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you remember that show Severance that started coming out earlier this year? You've heard about it, obviously. I mean, everybody's heard about it. It seems it's one of those like really, really big new shows. And
Doesn't it have, like, J.K. Simmons in it?
No. It has Adam Scott. It's got Britt Lauer and John Turturro and
I definitely think of something else.
Christopher Walken, and just a great ensemble cast. And basically the premise is that there are these people who get a chip implanted in their brain when they work for this company, and the chip creates a second personality that puts like their personal life and their work life separate. So they have no memory of their work or their personal life when they're in the opposite place. It's a little weird to think about at first.
Yeah, but the show does. I didn't know that's what it was about. That's pretty dope.
The show, it's very hard to explain, but once you start watching, the show does such a great job of explaining it episode by episode, because you're constantly like, just how does that work? And every episode gives you a little more that is explained in such a beautiful and perfect way that it just you're immediately like, that makes sense. I understand now. But that only brings 5 more questions.
So what I want to know is, and I don't want you to answer it, but what I want to know, like, don't answer it, don't spoil it, but like, how do they know, like, how do other people know who's at the wheel?
So it
the
is
work personality or the personal
as soon
personality?
As they go into their place of work, it snaps on. And as soon as they leave the place of work,
like a geosynchronous thing. Okay.
Exactly.
That's
so they take
that's too big a word for when I'm drunk.
They take an elevator. They take an elevator down to where they work, and as soon as the elevator they arrive at the floor where they work, immediately they snap in. So basically, their work personality leaves work, and they pop out and then immediately pop back in, because that's all that's all they're knowing, is that their other personality went off and did like lived a personal life and did whatever, and then they're immediately going back to work. So they're just constantly doing that. And people who are going to work are going down the elevator, and then immediately the elevator opens back up again at the top floor, and they're leaving and going home. It's a weird world, and I highly recommend it. I'm only 6 episodes in. I have 3 more to watch, and I'm dying to see them. I'm dying to see like where this show goes, because it's just so densely packed with world building that is so subtly built. Like, it's packed with subtle world building, I should say, because they don't just throw it at you. It's really, really subtle. You have to pay attention to every little detail to figure out what's going on in this world.
So,
and I love
what I'm taking away from it is I probably shouldn't be drinking.
Don't drink too heavily. I mean, you should always, enjoy a nice beer after work, but don't go too hard when you're watching this show. Or as they would say in How I Met Your Mother, just a little bit. Another show I've been rewatching recently. But besides that, what have you been watching, Cory? I want to know what you've been watching.
So I've been keeping up with Amazon's The Boys. Have you watched any of this?
I watched a little bit. I didn't love it at first. It kind of, rubbed a little the wrong way. Felt like it was a little too violent for the wrong reasons. But I'm willing to give it. I'm willing to give it another try. Sell me on it.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna need you to insert like a knuckle crack there, sound effect. Like
I can. I'll do that. I'll insert
anyway.
the knuckle crack.
So, The Boys, for those that don't know, it's an Amazon produced show about a world in which superheroes are commonplace, and even part of corporations. And also, this show does not hold back in terms of like the violence that could ensue with living in such a world and the collateral damage. You know, when you got galactic level events happening to the world, and you got people who can run super fast and people who are super strong like Superman, and like, there's bound to be casualties, there's bound to be collateral damage. And so in the Boys universe, they have a corporation that kind of protects them and worries about their public image. And it's just fucking brilliant, the take on it, and how it's almost like a soliloquy for celebrities and how we put celebrities on this pedestal and hold them to a whole new regard and like such a standard. And so the show endeavors to kind of take them down a peg, and in the sense that the show follows a group of people known as the Boys, where their whole purpose is to take down and ensure that the soups don't get too powerful, in the sense that like they don't gain too much control. And so they blackmail them, they get like dirt on them, and they kind of hold them hostage to their own bullshit, so to speak. So I don't know. I fucking love this show. I think it, in a world where we watch Justice League and Marvel and, the MCU is so big, to have a show that kind of turns it on its head. And it's like, instead of focusing on the combat and the saving the world and stopping crime part of being a superhero, this show like almost never shows that. They show more of like, well, should we go save these people? What is that going to do to my ratings? How are people going to look at me on Instagram? And like, they worry more about the modern social media world than they do about saving their fellow human being. And so just like that whole subtext is just brilliant to me. And then I personally love the over the top gratuitous violence that's involved. When they got the Superman character, a guy named Homelander, uses his laser vision and cuts people in half. Like, you literally see the visual effects team is working overtime on this show. Like, people, they pop out, like their body's split in half, and you'll see like guts flying out of the top half and shit like that. It's so fucking fantastic in my opinion, because it's one of those, definitely not safe for work shows, and it's amazing. So we're in the middle of season 3 right now. We just had an episode called The Hero-gasm, where it's literally like hundreds of C-grade superheroes get together for a giant orgy. And that's no holds bar on that episode. Like, they show everything. We're talking tits, dick, the whole nine.
I've heard the name.
Really gross.
That name has been circling the internet for the last few days. And but because I don't watch it, I only knew, well, it's The Boys, so I bet it's bad. You confirmed exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's so great. I don't know. It's great. The show it was developed by Eric Kripke, who is best known for the first 5 seasons of Supernatural. So if you liked that, you'll find a lot of the same veins, the same tone of kind of flipping stories on their head. Where Supernatural was like, oh, we're going to take down wolves and vampires as brothers, and kind of flipping that hunter story on its head. This one's doing superheroes, and it's just so well written, and it's just such an allegory of celebrities and the superhero genre and everything that the current pop culture media is loving. This show is just kind of spitting in the face of it and doing it in a way that you're just like, thank you, sir. May I have another?
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, Corey, I think I'm going to give it another shot. You've
give it another shot. So
you've sold me. I'm going to give it another shot. I'm going to get back to you. I'm going to get back to you. Maybe not next week. Maybe not the week after that, but soon. Soon I'm going to get back to you.
We're in the middle of season 3 right now. Hero Gasm is the middle of season 3. So you got, I think that was like episode 4 or 5 or 6. They do like 8 episodes a season. So you got a couple of weeks to catch up, and you can, get to season 3. I actually did that. I went back and rewatched seasons 1 and 2, and now I'm into 3, which works perfectly. Like I had forgotten a lot of like the little like characters and little side things, little like Easter eggs and little mentions of characters in the first seasons that become bigger characters in the third season. So
yeah,
I think binging it is definitely the better way to watch it than to do it week by week, which is what Amazon's doing to us. So,
well, I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna rewatch this. I'm gonna give this another try. I'm gonna ask you to do something for me as well. I want you to watch once you find the time. Watch The Leftovers, and I want you to put on your film student glasses when watching it.
My glasses have more glass in them than a fucking camera. If I do that, I'm not gonna be able to see shit.
I want you to put on your film student glasses, and I want you to watch The Leftovers, because it's just such a magical show.
Well, of course it's magical. Like 2% of the world's population disappears.
You got me there. That's exactly the point. It's such a great show, and every
it's not magic, it's tragic. You're mixing up your rhyming words.
Fair. It's a magical, tragical show.
You're a tragical show.
Anyway, no, that show, I've seen it through about 3 times. I'm on my 4th rewatch right now, and I just get something new every single time. It's a show that just keeps on giving, and it's the same creator who just did that Watchmen miniseries. That was the sequel to the original
Zack Snyder movie.
Yeah,
or no, the original comic.
No, it was the original comic book. It said "fuck the movie," and said we are the sequel to the original comic, and it works so well. It feels like a continuation. It's like, yeah, that's absolutely where they would be 30 years after that happened. A giant fucking squid landed on New York and killed 1 million people. Like, that's absolutely what would happen 30 years, 40 years later. That's where we would be. And so the reason Damon Lindelof got to make Watchmen was because of what he did with Leftovers. And the reason he got to do The Leftovers is because of what he did with Lost. He took that show from... I have not seen that whole show. I have not seen any of that show. I'm going to watch it.
Anybody has.
A lot of people have seen that show, but
they think they have. That show is so fucking confusing.
Anyway, yeah, no. Damon Lindelof is a student of David Lynch. Maybe not directly, but he very obviously watched his works. And you know how I feel about David Lynch. I think he's one of the more interesting, weird filmmakers to ever walk the earth.
You talking about that dude who gives us the weather? So today's weather is going to be sunny with a partly chance of clouds and a 20% chance of precipitation.
We must protect that man at all costs. He's a national treasure and he must survive.
I'm pretty sure we need to protect him from himself.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We need to protect him from himself and others. He's too chaotic for his own good.
That's the first thing you said that wasn't batshit crazy.
Oh, anyway, what were we talking about, Cory?
We were talking about rewatching shows. You want me to watch The Leftovers?
Yeah,
we'll see if I'm sober enough to put myself through that. Not likely, but we'll see.
You can drink. I'll allow it.
Oh, bitch, like you have a choice.
You know, another show I've been rewatching.
What's that?
I don't know why I do this to myself, because by the time I reach the end, I always hate myself.
Because you're a masochistic asshole.
I am a masochistic asshole. That's exactly.
It takes one to know one, so
yeah. No. I don't know what my thought is going to be here, so I'm just going to end it. I've been rewatching How I Met Your Mother, and I don't know why I do it to myself. I always tempt myself by. I get back into the first season, and I say, you know what, this is a good show because the first season is really
It
good.
starts so good.
It starts so well. The first few seasons are so good that it puts itself into my list of possibly some of the most influential sitcoms of all time. It's fantastic. It changed the game a little bit, in terms of like how
People met their mother.
How no, it
kidding.
changed the way that traditional stage sitcoms were filmed. Instead of just being a bunch of cameras set up, it did the same sort of thing, laugh track and everything, but it got more creative with the cinematography and the way it delivered exposition and whatnot. So it totally changed the game, and many shows that afterwards took lots of influence. But the thing about that show is it's just like Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not just talking about like the show. I'm talking about the showrunners as well. Do you remember it was a beautiful time, like 2009?
Cast your mind back.
Yeah, cast your mind back to like 2009, 2010. I even remember this, and I was just a kid. And I remember Carter Bays, Craig Thomas. These guys are gonna go far. These guys are the next big thing in television comedy. Greg Daniels and Mike Schur, absolutely. Mindy Kaling, of course. Carter Bays and Craig Thomas.
Craig, who are?
Sorry, I should back up. Yes, Greg Daniels
and
Mike.
The people who are not nerds like you and I and know every name of every person in the credits for these shows. Explain who these characters are to us, please, Graham.
Of course. So
I'm making another drink.
Of course, Carter Bays and Craig Thomas are the creators of How I Met Your Mother, and they created a really good show that crashed and burned. But of course, there were other showrunners at that time, 2009, 2010, who were being hailed as great writers, great show creators. Greg Daniels of The Office, he and Mike Schur doing Parks and Recreation. Mindy Kaling was moving on to do her own show. There was many great showrunners that were being hailed at this time, and Carter Bays and Craig Thomas were kind of at the top of that. People were saying, "Wow, they've changed the game with this sitcom. They're going to work for years. Everybody's going to want them." And they were making deals with all these different big, Paramount and Disney and all that shit. And then the show ended. And of course the show had one of the most horrible endings. In exactly 40 or 50 minutes, they undid all of the ninth season's building and workshopping on the characters. They undid all that, undid seasons worth of work just to get their original characters back together in a useless, no good ending. And immediately Carter Bays and Craig Thomas fell off the map, and nobody was working with them. You can go look at their IMDb, and they have barely done anything between How I Met Your Mother ending and helping write the pilot episode of this new show, How I Met Your Father.
Which they've barely done the whole series of How I Met Your Father. I watched the whole thing. It's a poor imitation. It does do a great job matching the cinematography of How I Met Your Mother. So it definitely feels like it's set in that same universe. They did a great job recreating that. And I do like they kind of flipped it on its head. So the original series was, the father talking to his two kids. I'm drunk. I forgot the name. Who's talking? Who's the voice in How I Met Your Mother?
Ted is in How I Met Your Mother, but I don't know about the girl. It's
Ted, but not Ted. But
in How I Met Your Father. The
actor.
Oh, Bob Saget.
Away.
Bob Saget.
Thank you.
The Right Honorable.
Yes, I knew it started with an S, but I was like, eh. But yeah, Bob Saget is the voice. So it's Bob Saget talking to his two kids. R.I.P. for sure.
And in this, it's Kim Cattrall, right?
it's Kim Cattrall, but she's the one that's on screen talking to her kid who's off screen, thus kind of
reversing
I
it.
think it's 100% reversing, but it also allows for a little more open endedness with how they take the story. Because
Yes.
the thing with How I Met Your Mother was like they set up the story, and then and if you notice, the kids never change after season 2. It's because they recorded everything they needed with the kids in the first 2 seasons, and then everything else is just playing the same clip over and over and over. It's one of my biggest pet peeves of the whole show. It's literally the same. The kids just like saying the same 3 things. What?
Yeah.
Huh? Like, wait.
Yeah.
Huh? Like it's the same reaction shots, and it's just Bob Saget.
If they had spent any amount of time, they could have got 100, 200 more reactions that could have been usable throughout the series, and they probably could have also gotten like 10 different things that they could use for the ending.
Yeah,
for possible different endings.
Going back to our original, going back to the earlier topic about being a script supervisor, their clothes change as well. They have 2 different there's 2 different sets of clothes those kids wear, so it jumps between the 2, and that bugs the living hell out of me in this show. But my point being is, so the Carter Bays and Craig Thomas knew what the ending was going to be of this show, even in season 2, because they recorded the whole ending for the finale with the kids back in season 2, and then they just ran with the show for as you said, like 9 seasons before they threw those clips in. So they knew where it was ending. It was just the journey to get there was just it was good for a while, and then it just kind of turned to garbage. And then that last season where they drew out the wedding, and then they had a time jump of like 30 years within an episode, and Barney's story and Robin's story all fucked up, and it's just weird. But anyway, at least they learned from their mistake on that front. So for How You Met Your Father, they have Kim Cattrall on camera, who they can record her year over year over year, and I guarantee she's not going to change how she looks in general. But they did already write themselves into a corner in the saying, after I think it's like in the first episode, they show like 5 guys on screen, and she's like, and that's How You Met Your Father. So it's like, well, it's going to be one of those 5 guys. Spoilers.
So,
yeah.
I
wasn't super impressed with the show, but I did appreciate some of the nuances and the Easter eggs that they tossed in there. But I don't see it going past maybe 2 seasons. Like, I think the first one might be, I'm not going to say good enough because it wasn't good, but I think it'll be nostalgic enough to warrant a second season. But I don't see it going past that. I think at that point,
unless they really step up their game with the writing. I've just rewatching it and seeing that ending. It's so disappointing, and that's why I compare it to Game of Thrones. Is at the same time in like 2014, 15, when Game of Thrones was the biggest thing on the market, David Benioff and DB Weiss, they were getting the same kind of praise. They were making deals with Star Wars and with Marvel and Paramount
Gods
for Star Trek
men.
stuff. They were gonna change the industry and do what they did to Game of Thrones. And then they finished Game of Thrones, and everybody was like, "Look, we're gonna have to we're gonna take a look at your contract." And
let's pump the brakes for a minute.
We're gonna take a look at your contract and get back to you.
Yeah.
And then we're not gonna get back to you. We're just being honest with you. We're not gonna get back to you. So
this isn't happening.
So yeah, I feel bad. I feel bad because I think it comes down to well, in one case, setting your goals too high, too early with How I Met Your Mother, and with Game of Thrones, rushing to the finish line.
Makes sense.
With How I Met Your Mother, they had a full season to wrap it up, and honestly, I thought they did it like for the fact that the show was not great between season 6 and 8. I think season 9 is strong. They did a really interesting and good job having everything take place in
A weekend.
a weekend, an entire weekend. They did a really good job of that, and they had it all tie together, and the continuity was really good and interesting and fun. And then in just 2 episodes, they undo everything. They undo
Yeah.
everything that they've built in that season. It's not just about everything they've built in the entire series, but it's everything that they did in that season. All of the character development that the characters get in that season goes out the entire window by the end of the final episode. And it's just disappointing. There's a show that many people consider to be a heavy influence on How I Met Your Mother, and that's Scrubs. It's a show that you, as long as I've
Scrubs.
known you, you adore this show. You just,
Facts.
yeah, for me, everybody has that sitcom that they can just quote on end. Everything to them can be referenced back to that show. For me, it's Parks and Recreation. For many people, it's The Office and Friends and Cheers and Dick Van Dyke Show. Everybody's had that for going back for years and years. But for my friend Cory here, it is Scrubs.
He really know my Scrubs.
Yeah, he really knows his Scrubs. And so I wanted to get you to talk a bit about it. I want you to have a shot, and then I want you to talk a little bit about Scrubs. Oh, that's a beautiful little shot glass. I like that. How many shots is that?
You don't want to know.
Oh God. Mm. Well, as long as I've
That's
known you, you love to talk about Scrubs and go on tirades, if you will. So I wanted to introduce the audience to a new segment that I want to call the Tipsy Tirade. So I want you to take that shot, and then I'm going to give you to the count of 5. And I want you to really give us your thoughts on Scrubs. Really just like, what is the magic of that show?
ooh, and it's fucking magical, let me tell you.
Yeah. Whenever you're ready.
You told me you were gonna give me a count to a 5, bitch.
I said take the shot, and then you have from the count of 5 once you finished it to go.
Oh. Sorry. Figuring out the order of operations on this.
Yes.
You and your cockamamie schemes. All right.
No. 5, 4, 3, 2.
So the first thing, if you watch this show, like I love Scrubs. I've been watching Scrubs since when it was airing, back in the early 2000s. That's how old I fucking am. But if you watch this show, find the DVDs. You got to find the DVDs for this show because the streaming services, while good and it's easy, don't go the easy route. Don't go the safe route. Don't get it on Amazon. Don't get it on Hulu, because part of this show, like a good chunk of why this show is so fucking special, is the soundtrack. Bill Lawrence, his wife Christina Miller, and Zach Braff, as well as many of the people behind the scenes, worked really fucking hard to put together a great soundtrack to this show. And when it moved to digital, they weren't able to secure all the rights to every single song that was used in the original show. And so a lot of the emotional beats, while still good, are just like are elevated to great with the right musical track behind it. Case in point, and I think they might have had it on the streaming, but my case in point will always be season 5. There's a great fucking scene with John C. McGinley playing the infamous Dr. Cox, where he inadvertently made a decision that affected the lives of 3 patients of his in the show, and 2 of them have died. There's a scene where the third one is dying, and he's trying to resuscitate this patient. He's doing the whole fucking defibrillators, cleared, cleared, trying to fucking shock him to life. And it's just so goddamn emotional. It's so beautiful. I defy anybody to watch this episode and understand the story and watch this episode and keep a dry eye with the original soundtrack playing, which he's doing this whole thing to The Cure's How to Save a Life. It's fucking fantastic. This show just does a fucking great job of balancing the the emotions of being in that world of, you know, like you, Graham, and I, we went to school for filmmaking, which means we get to play, you know, make believe for, you know, however much we want, and put together you know, a movie or a short film or something like that for 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes, whatever have you. But we're just fucking make believe. There's no one really at risk here. There's no stakes. It's just fun. But doctors fucking, they hold our lives in their hand, and this show does a great fucking job of balancing that. They cure folks. They take it seriously, that like they're fucking special. Like they help us, but it also keeps a great comedic timing and a great fantasy element to it, with these like the main character played by Zach Braff as JD has these like little fantasies here and there, and like what he wants the world to be versus what it actually is. And it just, the juxtaposition between those is so fantastic. And then we get his internal narration throughout the show, as he voiceovers almost everything. It's just so beautifully well done, so beautifully written and acted and performed. And I fucking love this show. I mean, just true to your point earlier, we were talking about series finales. This show, if has the best, you know, if not the best series finale of any show. Now, Scrubs fans are going to fight me and say, "Oh, well, they had season 9." Yeah, we're not going to talk about season 9. Season 8, that's where the series actually fucking ended. Uh, has a series finale that is just so fucking beautiful and so well done. I don't think it could be matched anywhere else in a show. I mean, there's some great series finales out there, don't get me wrong. The Office did a great job with it. Parks and Recreation did a great job with it. The Good Place had a great finale with, you know, like there's some great ones. And this one, Scrubs finale in season 8, belongs among the great, where like it's just so beautiful that they harken back to 8 seasons worth of great content. They look towards the future. They leave it open ended in the sense that like it's not questioned, but it's like it's just beautiful. It brings a tear to your eye, and then to top it off, you get a great cameo right at the end by Bill Lawrence himself, the showrunner, the writer, the man who created it all. He steps in a nice little cameo. The show ends, and that man went on to create another great show, Ted Lasso, which I don't know. You've been watching that, right, Graham? That's a fucking great show.
When I was going through some pretty tough times last year, that show was a great thing to watch.
Believe
that show is just filled with happiness, and I love it. I truly love it. It was there for me, and I am so thankful that we're getting another season, and I am happy that they're ending it on their terms. Nothing makes me happier than when a show ends on their own terms.
For those who haven't heard, Ted Lasso announced that the next season's season 3, or series 3, as the Brits call it, is going to be the last for Ted Lasso currently at the moment. So, which is nice. Yeah, I agree with you. I think when shows go out on their own terms versus pandering to the audience of, you know, let's keep this show around for 10 seasons like How I Met Your Mother did.
Yeah.
It just loses heart. It loses its panache. It loses the special quality to it, and it just overstays its welcome. So I'm excited for that as well.
And all the shows that you just mentioned as having great endings, not only were involved with either Greg Daniels or Mike Schur, but they were all shows that went out on their own terms. The Good Place could have gone on for many seasons. They could have drawn that story out as long as they wanted. But they decided, you know what? It feels right to just end it at season 4. It's a short story. It's not a long story. And Parks and Recreation, they were told, you know, this show is starting to get a little old. We should end it, and we have the perfect place to do it, and we know how we want to end it. And it has one of my favorite finales of all time. And The Office, same thing there. After having a kind of rough patch with season 8, which I still liked that season, but it is admittedly a rough patch in the entire show. they decided, you know what, we could turn this into an ER and just change the cast and keep the show going for 25-30 years, but maybe it's better that we just end it now, keep the show with its original cast, with its original story, finish it and put a cap on it. And that is what makes a good show. I think shows that go on for too long and have to get canceled because they went on for too long, those never have good endings. They never have good endings because it's just a continuation of what you've seen before. It's just more of that, and then they try and put a little, we'll put a little cap on this, I guess. Make it feel like it's over. You know, and and it just doesn't work. I think shows need to be given their chance to tell their proper ending, instead of just being
Tell the story and then walk
cast.
away gracefully.
Walk away
I think that's
gracefully,
where
yeah.
a lot of British television versus our American television has a jump on us. That it tells the story it's set out to tell, and then it just is like, all right, we're done, and
Yeah.
it's done.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
it's quality, not quantity.
Yeah. That's why I like The Leftovers so much. It's only 28 episodes. It's 3 seasons. It's a
Oh
short
Jesus Christ! You want me to watch 20 episodes of something?
it's totally worth it. But and so Fringe, one of my favorite shows of all time is Fringe. And that show was nearly canceled. It was canceled after season 4. And admittedly, the end of season 4 is, for a network television show, good. It's a solid ending for a network television show. But Fringe had grown out of its network origins. If it had been pitched 5 years later, it would have jumped on Netflix, and probably the idea would have become one of the biggest, like, streamer. It would have been Stranger Things big, I think. But
For
it
those who
was
don't know, really quick, just a little context. Fringe was one of the original IP developed by J.J. Abrams back in the late thousands.
2008, ran from 2008 to 2013. Um,
So this is like the emergence time of
of
J.J. Abrams
s-
before he did Star Trek, before he
I
did Star
mean,
Wars.
I mean, he had already he had
He
created
was growing.
Lost. He had created Lost. He directed several
True.
movies. He was all while he was doing Fringe.
But
He
it
was
was a J.J.
also
Abrams thing, which I
developing
think
the
the people
first Star
need to
Trek
know.
movie. So he was already known in the film industry, and he was growing at the time that he made this. But this
Film industry,
show,
but not the public. And
yeah, but this show did help
we're
put his
pandering
name
to
on
the
the
public,
market.
goddammit, Graham.
That's right. That's right. But this show did put his name on the market. The people started seeing, created by J.J. Abrams, not only on Alias and Lost, but finally on Fringe. This was like, oh man, he's all over the place. And
He's
but
doing
the
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 Lord's
but
work.
the fact is, he really didn't do much past the first season, and eventually it was taken over by some of the executive producers who were not even listed as creators, and they took it basically in season 3, or season 2, middle of season 2, and just realized, okay, we this is the path we're going to take because the creators are off doing Star Trek. And what they did with Fringe is so interesting. It inspired a lot of what I do with my own writing. And I think that it was so interesting what they did with the final season. When they realized that they were getting canceled, they went out, they spent their own money, and filmed a 3-minute promotional video, and then they put it out on YouTube, and before even telling the executives, and then showed it to the executives after posting it on YouTube and said, "Look, this is already getting buzz. We want to do season 5. We really want to do it. We know how we want to finish this show. Please just let us do it because we can do it in 13 episodes." And that show has I love Parks and Recreation. The two different genres. For comedy, Parks and Recreation has one of my favorite finales of all time. Fringe has my favorite finale of all time. for what the show set out to be, it has the perfect finale, and I love it. And so it's just another example of what happens when you let a show go out on its own terms instead of cutting it short or letting it go on too long and having to take it out back and shoot it.
Well, enough about TV shows, Graham. Let's talk about some films. Let's talk about movies.
Yeah.
As we promised in the beginning of the episode. You just watched Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness.
I did. Yeah, I finally watched it. I'm really bad about just getting up and going to the theater, so I every day I would tell myself I should just go see it, and I never would. So it finally came to streaming and I watched it, and I have to say I really liked it. It was a breath of fresh air in the MCU. It was. I hated the first Doctor Strange movie. Let me put it this way. I hated the first.
Bitch, say what?
I hated the first half of Doctor Strange 1. I loved the second half of it.
Tread carefully, sir.
Tread carefully. I loved the effects of Doctor Strange. I liked the ideas that they were setting forth, and I liked the world that they were giving us. But that movie felt like a speed run. Do you watch speedruns in video games, Cory, ever?
Yeah, occasionally.
Where they just they skip over everything. They spam the dialogue. They do shortcuts through areas. They'll if they're playing
glitch,
like Ocarina of Time, they'll not necessarily glitch. I'm talking about ones where they legitimately play the game. They're just going as fast as they can. That's what the first Doctor Strange movie felt like, because within like 5 minutes of course, it has a really cool opening, that like traditional Marvel opening, like, ooh, what's going on here? Very mysterious. But after that, from the point we meet Stephen Strange to the point that he becomes the magician, it is an hour and a half that could have been sorcerer. Sorry. By the time he becomes that, it's an hour and a half that should have been like way more time spent, and it just feels like they just ran. Okay, we hit this milestone. Okay, sprint to the next one, and they were just handing off the baton just constantly for the next scene, and it never got any breathing room. I would have preferred if they just jumped in without trying to introduce the character's like origin. I would have preferred if they just jumped in with this character and then slowly seeded his origin in like flashbacks or something. Like, oh yeah, I was in a car crash. Okay, that's all we need to know. Yeah, my hands were crippled. Cool. We don't need a whole hour and a half devoted to my hands were broken in this. I was a great surgeon. Oh,
it was 20 minutes, you asshole.
Lead from the point we meet him to the point that he actually becomes a sorcerer, it's like a full hour and a half of just his build-up, and it's mostly like my hands. So I like the second half of the movie, but I hate the first half. But Multiverse of Madness, I thought was great. I really liked it. I have to say, it was just fun. It was crazy. It was off the hook. I found some of the deaths, especially amongst the Illuminati, quite upsetting. But besides that,
it was brutal, right?
It was brutal. Fucking like, wow. They did Jim Halpert that way. They did Jim Halpert.
They did Jim.
Like that.
Way to tie it back.
Anyway, where was I?
But we brought back the actor from Captain Marvel to play Maria Rambeau.
Yeah, Maria Rambeau,
Captain Marvel instead of Brie Larson.
So we're aware of that actress, and we're like, okay, cool. This is since it's the multiverse.
Mounts,
this is obviously just
not immortal, Inhuman,
right? And then Patrick Stewart as Xavier. But
we talked about that already.
Sorry, I'm high. You have to forgive me. But and then
I forgive nothing.
And then but you're right. The reveal, the arrival of
we're not going to just talk about Baron Mordo in here. Come on, let's not. Quit jumping the gun. You have no foreplay abilities. You sometimes gotta give a little foreplay. Talk build up to it. Don't just jump the gun. Let's build it up. You got Baron Mordo, you got Patrick Stewart, you got Maria Rambeau, you got Anson Mount. We had all these great characters introduced as the Illuminati, and then before everybody just comes over the face, neck, and chest, we had
John Krasinski come in as Reed Richards, the smartest man in the world, in the universe.
See, was that so hard?
I thought you had already done it. I'm sorry. I'm high. I thought you had teed it up. I thought you were done setting them up because they thought there was like 4 of them.
I'm drunk, man. I'm pushing rope. You don't know what.
Whatever. So yeah, that was fun. Since people have been talking about that on the internet for like 4 years now, which is probably how long they've been filming this. So that's the rumor probably started as soon as.
That's why the filmmakers came out, and that's why they brought him in, because they're like, hey, it's the multiverse. We can do whatever the fuck they want, because like this isn't going to be the final casting of who plays Reed Richards in the final the Fantastic Four movie. So like, let's just have fun with it. And the internet wants this, so let's give them this. Why not?
Couldn't it be? Like
it could be.
He honestly
it certainly
was
could be.
Fun.
Playing him and Emily Blunt in
I think that would be a great.
I would love to see him more.
I think that they could incorporate it really well. Like Kevin Feige has shown himself to be able to retcon things into the MCU quite well. But I think that what they could probably do is just have like John Krasinski and
Emily
Blunt come in as Reed Richards and Sue Storm, and just have them be like slightly older. They're not like in their 20s. They've worked a little bit, but have the Fantastic Four be like, I think, because they can't just have them, oh, they've been doing other stuff. Like, no, they can't do that. They have to bring them in through the multiverse at this point. I think that's their way of retconning things.
So can I postulate my theory?
Sure.
May I provide you some drunken thoughts?
Mother, may I? The floor is yours. Please, I see. Take it.
Porcupine, please.
Porcupine, please. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
So Kevin Feige this past week came out and said he stated that the future of Phase 4 of the Avengers and Marvel characters is going to become much more clear in the near future. Most people believe this is going to happen at the San Diego Comic-Con. That he's going to unveil the whole map of like what Phase 4, just like how Avengers, they had the Avengers, which teased Thanos. He was like, yep, it's leading up to Thanos and the Infinity Stones, and that's how we ended up with Endgame after a 10-year run. I feel like we're going to get something similar here in the near future. Well, just like how we got the Avengers at the end of Phase 1, it was at the culmination where they brought in everybody, and it was a big story arc of like how they brought all these characters together. My prediction is at the end of next year, 2023/early 2024, we're going to do the same thing, and it's going to be Secret Wars. And if you don't know, Secret Wars in the comics was a culmination of bringing in a bunch of different characters from the various universes to fight each other, heroes and villains alike. And it was done by Kang the Conqueror, who we have seen in the Loki series.
Yeah.
So Kang, in my mind, is going to be either the new Loki or the new Thanos. But either way, he's going to be the ultimate villain that brings in all these characters that we've been experiencing in the Phase 4. Shang-Chi, Doctor Strange, maybe Wanda again. I don't think she's dead. The new Black Yelena Belanova is the new Black Widow. The new Hawkeye with Kate Bishop.
Yeah.
All these characters that we're getting introduced in films and TV shows are going to come together. The Young Avengers, and everybody's going to come together in this episode, this movie, to take on Kang the Conqueror in Secret Wars. And because of that, by doing so, because he's pulling in all the greatest heroes and villains from across the multiverse, that is how we get Fantastic Four, which could be John Krasinski, Emily Blunt, and 2 unnamed actors in the other 2 roles, which I would be totally on board for. We'd also get the X-Men.
Yes.
And Deadpool. That is how we get Ryan
Deadpool.
Reynolds in.
And
is
I
Deadpool.
am 100%. There's a thing that's been passed around. I'm gonna state it here for the record that I am 100% in favor of this. Since the passing of Stan Lee, may he rest in peace, there has been a noticeable uh, gap in all of Marvel's projects, and that is the Stan Lee cameo. There's always an iconic Stan Lee cameo where he shows up and says something crazy for the kids. Oh, you crazy kids, I love you.
I got a
and then
package
vanishes.
here for Tony Stank.
Tony Stank.
That's my favorite.
Is that Tony Stank? Yeah. Anyway, so at the time I was working as this mail delivery guy. So he always had some crazy thing to say. I am 100% in favor of a theory that was tossed out there. I don't know who. If somebody out there knows who to credit, please say so. But the idea that Deadpool should become the new Stan Lee, where he appears for a scene in every single project just to say something, just to comment on what's going on. Some people have pitched variations of this. One is where Deadpool, in Deadpool's outfit, is dressed up like Stan Lee, trying to be Stan Lee doing his cameo. I think that's a little much. I think it should just be Deadpool, because that would be very on brand for his character to show up in a situation and not help out at all. I think it would be fantastic. So Marvel, if you're watching, and
They're not.
they're not. No, of course they're not. Not up to this point in the video. Marvel, if you're
Nobody
watching,
is at this
please,
point. So nobody's watching this.
Yeah, please put Deadpool into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, not only as his own character to do his own movies and such and continue his own franchise, but also as the new Stan Lee cameo aficionado.
I hadn't heard that theory, but if there was anybody to take over that role, that would be amazing. Even
Ryan
if it was
Reynolds.
just like
Ryan
Reynolds in his like Deadpool makeup, looking all like gross
Yeah.
and fuck,
Yeah.
burnt and shit. If we just start seeing him in the background, like saving people and doing random shit, like we saw in the early Stan Lee cameos. I mean,
Yes.
in the early days, I mean, the original X-Men, he was in the background of a scene. In the Spider-Man movie, he like saved people briefly.
Yeah.
Like he's always like, it started with very small, brief, like blink and you miss it roles. If they started doing that with Ryan Reynolds and his like burnt look, and then slowly introduce Deadpool that way,
yeah,
that would be fucking brilliant.
That would be fucking
totally
brilliant.
on board with that.
And for all we know, they've already begun. But
I don't think so.
People would have caught that.
Net nerds,
net nerds would have found that by now. Like, holy shit, that's fucking Deadpool.
Plus, let's be honest. Ryan Reynolds probably costs a shit ton more to put in movies than Stan Lee did. Stan would show up for one day and record like 4 cameos.
Yeah,
I was so disappointed to hear that when he recorded his cameo in the Deadpool movie, where he's the announcer for the strip club.
Yeah,
he wasn't actually at that strip club. He was in a green screen booth in a studio recording it. And I was like, come on, man, the dude's like 90. Give him some boobs.
That's so disappointing. That would have been hilarious that Stan Lee like showed up at the strip club like, hey ho, I'm ready to do this.
Excelsior.
Oh, what a guy.
Which is onward and upward, which is what my penis is doing. Excelsior. Like, come on, man. Give the guy some tits in his last days. But anyway, that would have been brilliant. Or the other cameo that I think they should start incorporating, in my opinion, my personal opinion, my drunken ass thoughts of who they should start throwing in little cameos to replace Stan Lee, Kevin Feige. I think Kevin Feige should start doing cameos.
I think he should. I think he should start doing Hitchcock style cameos. But I don't think he should take over the Stan Lee. I think that there needs to be a replacement to the Stan Lee like thing. There needs to be that consistent, because there was that like little like link that Stan Lee was always there in the background. You always knew to expect him. And now that link is gone, there's just that little tiny thing that's missing, and they need that link again. They need that
They
piece.
do. but
that is consistent
shy of doing
throughout.
that bullshit that they've just announced where Disney has like purchased the rights to using his likeness for the next 20 years, even post mortem.
Mm.
I don't want to see Stan Lee in more stuff if it's just straight up CGI. I do not
Yeah.
want to see his face, and if it's CGI, I liked how Venom put him on like the cover of a magazine. I thought that was clever and smart, where it's a blink and you miss it, but he was included. Into the Spider Verse was okay because he was
Yeah.
animated, but it was still his voice. But I don't want it forced. The man has
Yeah.
passed. R.I.P. Don't do it. Don't force it. But I would like I think Kevin Feige would be a good supplement because let's be honest, he's the Stan Lee of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like whereas Stan brought all these comics to life in the 60s and brought us all these characters we know, Kevin Feige is the hot, the great mind of bringing those characters to the big screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I 100% agree with you. Now you just brought up an interesting point of not wanting to like force
Stan Lee
people.
cameos.
You don't want to force like, but in general, like dead people to be recreated and just forced onto the public without their approval. Um, what is your opinion on Darth Vader's voice, James Earl Jones, being digitally created for further Star Wars projects? I just to preface this, I I don't necessarily believe this. This is just I've been thinking about it recently, and this is a thought that I had that because the character is supposed to be it's supposed to be the like the voice box sounds like James Earl Jones, then creating a digital version of him is acceptable. It draws a line when it becomes a physical like an actual likeness of the person uh uh for the purpose of being that person.
Okay,
James
okay,
Earl
okay.
Jones, I think that it's possible that James Earl Jones's voice here could stand is within the lore of Star Wars allowed to be so allowed to be used for that purpose.
I agree with you there. Using James Earl Jones's voice likeness because he didn't actually record any of the lines for Obi-Wan. James Earl Jones, they use this new company that analyzes the vocal cords and recordings of old movies and old voice recordings to recreate the timbre and the pitch for voices. In the case of Obi-Wan with Darth Vader, where yes, his voice is modulated to begin with, I think that's fine. I think that's the same as using visual effects to recreate a look, and it doesn't break the uncanny valley, which is if you don't know, the uncanny valley is a filmmaking term of like how you can tell if something's fake or not through the use of visual effects. That being said, I was a little torn on it on how they used it with Luke Skywalker in Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian by extent, but like Mandalorian had a couple lines. Book of Boba Fett had like a full episode of conversations between him and Ahsoka and Din Djarin, The Mandalorian, even though it was the Book of Boba Fett, whole other conversation. But like they had Mark record the lines, but then they used this company that recreates voice to make him sound like he did in 1983 when Return of the Jedi. Ugh, I'm drunk. Return of the Jedi came out. So I think the voice modulation in that instance, it should be used like visual effects. It should be used to enhance and make possible what isn't possible, but it shouldn't come out as fake. It shouldn't be clear that it's fake. Case in point, you brought up Star Wars. When we saw Rogue One, we had a whole like scene with Grand Moff Tarkin in it. Well, he's been dead for years,
Yeah.
and so we all know he's gone. And it's like that
And
ruined that scene because we know he wasn't there.
I'm gonna
Even though he looks fantastic,
I'm gonna
is like
take the devil's advocate on that. So in this case, we know that the actor Henry Cushing, was it Henry? I'm forgetting his name
Peter.
right now. Peter Cushing.
Peter
Sorry.
Cushing.
Sorry. Rest in peace, Peter Cushing. He was phenomenal in the original Star Wars, and he was always disappointed that he never got to make a return in Star Wars. And he said for many years that if they ever did something, some sort of spin off with that character, he even back then was thinking about like this character could make a return somehow if we did like something that takes place before. And so he for many years wanted to be in Star Wars again, and loved the series and loved all the movies that came subsequently. And so in that case, it was honoring. I think it was honoring him to have just a scene, just one scene, not doing a whole movie of him being the character, but just a scene honoring him and giving him what he wished he had in real life and what he probably should have gotten. Well, not necessarily. He doesn't need to get the movie, but like that, I think it was very nice of them that they did that. So it just
Okay.
comes down to the wishes of the person. And with Stan Lee, it's the idea of licensing his likeness to just use it how they will for the next 20 years. And that feels sketchy. Instead of honoring him, it feels like marketing. In
Exactly.
the case of Peter Cushing, it felt like honoring. Here it feels like
Yeah, if they
money.
let's say Lord and Miller, the two guys who are writing the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, which had a great Stan Lee cameo in it, if they decided to put another Stan Lee cameo in there as like a nice homage farewell tribute to the character and to the man, I think that'd be okay. But shoehorning in cameos
Yeah.
into movies and TV shows where he's pivotal or goofy or unnecessary just to have him in there, just to create that through line.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where I draw umbrage.
And it can't be every single time. We're not saying that this is permission. You have permission to do a Stanley cameo as long as it's a tribute to him. No. One tribute
Oh.
or two tributes, that's fine. They've already given him several tributes, like in the last few or like last movie that he appeared in.
I thought Endgame did a great job with the
Endgame did a great job with
enough
it.
said, and like that was a sign off for him for a while. Enough said.
Yeah, enough
he
said.
drove off into the distance.
I thought that was
All right,
great.
we're done.
I thought that was wonderful. If they want to do one more, like in honor of him, I'm okay with it. But they can't make it a regular thing, or else it'll start to become trite.
It's just it
It'll
breaks
trite.
the uncanny valley. It'll be tacky, trite, and just like it'll take you out of the experience because it's like, oh, here we go, a Stan Lee cameo by totally forced, totally unnecessary. Totally
I never want to roll my eyes.
Effects.
I never want to roll my eyes at a Stanley cameo. I only ever want to.
Yeah.
I only ever want to remember
Respect
them fondly. I only ever want to remember him fondly.
Agreed. All right. Well, Stan the man, he left an imprint on us. So hopefully Marvel treats him right. And at the end of the night, I hope we treated you right. This was episode 3 of Drunk Thoughts and High Opinions, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We're gonna go ahead and sign off for now. So, but if you enjoyed the episode, hit that like and subscribe button, as we say every week, and please feel free to shoot us a comment below. You got some high opinions, you got some drunk thoughts, you got some cracked out opinions. I don't give a fuck. Just hit us up. Let us know what you think of the show, what you think of our thoughts and our opinions on what we discussed. And, I hope you continue to join us week over week as we just dissect whatever the fuck we feel like discussing when we're inebriated.
Yeah.
So
there are no rules. There are no limits to what we can talk about. So this was a great week. Sorry, I'm a little... I'll cut around this.
Graham, you appear to be high.
I am very high. But that's the point here. It's Drunk Thoughts and High Opinions. And that's all for this week. We'll see you next time.
Cheers, everybody.